Hello, I'm coming back to continue from where I stopped with my book, Beyond a Sojourner, my 13th book. Last time I read on the place of change or the role of change in success pathway. Today we are reading chapter 25, the place of obedience in life success. If you care to observe, some people are prone to obeying more than others. Some actions which are not ethical, nor rational or healthy, people obey just to belong or obey the authority. And they are seen as very nice people without being fair to their consciences. And if in another situation, they will act differently. Some of these reactions or actions are group conformed and may not appeal to the rights to be right to the conscience of the persons concerned, and if left alone, these individuals will act differently. When a person acts against his or her conscience to please an authority, it is called blind obedience. And blind obedience is very common in our society these days. Everybody is willing to please the authority to gain favors. In most societies, some level of compliance is necessary to have normal behaviors among the members, no matter how enlightened or primitive. There are authority figures with mandates to issue behavior codes to others for peace, discipline, and respect to reign, and for societies to remain unified. These powers depend on different areas and demands of the profession and calling. There are also limitations and boundaries. Examples are as follows. A policeman cannot prescribe medicine to a drunk driver on the road, as a doctor in a consulting room cannot ask his patient to show him or her academic certificates. Obedience is an implicit recognition of the person involved and the person issued to as being the legitimate authority in that domain. When a person obeys to the extent of violating his or her conscience, the obedience is blind. Though some level of compliance is necessary to maintain sanity in societies, blind obedience can be dangerous. Examples are cases as Nazi death camps, Soviet purges, Cambodian massacres, ethical cleansing in Bosnia and Kosovo, Guyana tragedy, and others in our different countries that may not be recorded in books, but we all have different types that people obey and even tell lies to the extent of death. They remain loyal to falsehood and to the wrong authorities. It's very common in the way some citizens cooperate with corrupt leaders in our different countries. It is surprising how some people can obey to the extent of losing lives. What is responsible for this kind of obedience, if we may ask? What are the factors that make some people to follow blindly than others? 1. Early guidance or formation. Authoritarian parenting, creates fear in children to disobey parents and those in authority. 2. Non-egalitarian classroom with a strict teacher also mold people who obey blindly because they are scared of being shut down when they try to contribute their ideas in class. 3. The socio-economic conditions of some people have made them to obey blindly recently. Poverty and insatiable lust for money have made people carry out any form of atrocity to please the authority and the rich people in the society. People's consciences are not developed to have consideration and love for others any longer. A study carried out by the University of California 10 years after World War II, Berkeley precisely, discovered that there is a personality type that was predisposed toward totalitarian dogma and are to obey unquestionable Adorno, Frankel, Brunswick, Lewison, and Sanford, 1950. Others were authoritarian figures who submit to those above them and are generally harsh to those below them and believe in the importance of power and dominance. Children require these two attributes to be integrated into their upbringing template. What two attributes? Obedience and respect to authority. Most social problems would have been solved in the world if there are no corrupt and feeble-minded people. This makes people to be divided into two, that is, weak and strong categories, cited in Gleitman, 1986. These personalities were formed in childhood, particularly children with stern and highly punitive to the parents, or should I say punitive parents. The hostility experienced by children in authoritarian and pessimistic parenting atmospheres are transferred or projected to weaker and minority groups that come in contact with them later in life. A set of these personalities see other people as tyrants who will crush them if they do not crush them first. And this is the reason for the aggressive behavior. The other set feels they must obey without no reasons and find it difficult to say no, even at the expense of killing their conscience. Proverbs 6, 1-5 advise people to ensure they are careful about getting into harsh arguments to avoid making themselves responsible to other people's debts. Our God has so graciously given his statutes in the Bible as guidelines in making heaven and living day-to-day lives. We need to use wisdom to discern these words with restrictions. The young and the inexperienced should be careful in going into agreements they do not understand explicitly, or making promises or pledges that they cannot redeem. Some promises can be difficult to redeem, and they end up bringing distress to our families, dishonor to our names, and reproach upon our Christian testimony. If one cannot redeem a vow, the person should have no rest until he or she has redeemed the pledge. Or the person should not even think of pledging what he or she cannot redeem. Then we go on to talk about de-individuation. According to Le Bon, people in a crowd become wild, stupid, and irrational, giving vent to primitive impulses that are normally suppressed. As the emotional act becomes contagious, more members of the crowd become affected. Thus, fear becomes terror. Hostility turns into murderous rage, and the crowd member becomes a savage barbarian. A grain of sand among other grains of sand, which the wind stirs up at will. Cited from Le Bon, 1895. The key factor to crowd reaction is de-individuation, a state which an individual behaves as a crowd and not as an individual. Logic and conscience are not considered usually in most mob actions because no particular person is held responsible for the act. Another thing we are going to read here is being other person's agents. People obey because they see themselves as agents of other people. The obedience nature is stressed from childhood, from family, schools, marriage, and other adult associations. Backgrounds made people to undergo actions which are initiated by other individuals. The good child obeys the parents. The good employee does as the boss or policy directs he or she, even at the expense of his conviction. The good wife must be totally submissive, even to the extent of a death sentence. Soldiers are even ordered to obey before complaining. These entire groups are agents because their actions are not self-generating and they are mere instruments in the hands of other users. What is the place of obedience in life success? The question again. Everyone has a purpose and goal in life in which there will be no life satisfaction or accomplishment. Because of the selfish nature of most world leaders, parents and bosses, it takes a determined and focused person to accomplish his or her life goals. People should have breaks from routines to think critically from time to time and take stock of their life activities. Even when growth in a career is unusually great and sometimes to the peak, the person may not feel accomplished. People should understand their success paths. So, if you do not understand what you are doing to be successful, then it's difficult for you to control yourself, to control who you obey, the actions you take, and so on and so forth. So the next chapter will discuss self-development and understanding as the necessary tools for life journeys. Thank you. We shall continue again. Maybe with this book or any other book. Thank you for giving me your ears. Bye.